Hi, I'm Bridget Donner, a Director of Product Marketing at the Service Cloud, and I'm joined by Nick Toman, Managing Director at CEB and co-author of the Effortless experience. Thanks for joining us, Nick.
Thanks so much for having us, Bridget.
All right, we are coming to you live from Dreamforce, the first day of Dreamforce. This is my favorite time of year. And we'd like to talk a little bit more about the Effortless experience and about what you're hearing from service professionals today. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about the research that this book is based on?
Yeah, this is an unusual book in that it's based on a tremendous amount of research. We went out and we studied 120,000 customer interactions as the basis of this research, and really that took course over 8 years of research. So understanding all sorts of different customer interactions, whether that was complex B2B customer interactions, whether it was fairly simple and transactional business to consumer interactions. We looked at a whole variety of interactions, different channels that customers interact with, whether that's contact centers and live phone, whether that's web-based interactions, mobile interactions, email, chat, you name it. And we also looked at a whole different variety of service environments. Mm-hmm. And so trying to understand from sort of the break, fix, delayed resolution for a complex enterprise system that's gone down, mm-hmm. all the way to something as simple as, say, an address change. But what we were trying to understand with our research is really, what do customers want in a service experience? Because I think in many cases there's a lot of beliefs as to what's the right answer, what's the way to engage customers in those interactions. And so we were just really trying to understand from more of an inquisitive point of view, what really does matter? What do customers want in these variety of different interactions?
So what do they want?
So in a nutshell, the book is titled What They Want. And really what customers want is ease. Customers want a low effort experience with companies, and it's interesting because I often get asked the question, what is the baseline level of customer expectation? Mm-hmm. Just what do they want in any kind of service and support interaction? Now, if I'm a customer and I walk into, say, a Ritz-Carlton property, right, I have probably a different expectation than if I walk into, say, a budget hotel.
Yeah, makes
sense. So at some level, expectations are very relative, but what we found is that if you step back and you kind of consider really what's going on in any moment of customer service, there's really some very basic expectations that any customer has at any point in time, irrespective of the issue. And that really boils down to, one, gee, I wish I wasn't doing this right now. And two, how can I get back to my life as quickly as possible? Mm-hmm. Whether I'm at work in a professional setting, resolving my day-to-day issues and the things I need to work on, or whether I'm at home and just want to spend time with my family. Yeah. Those are really the baseline expectations that people want.
Interesting. So what was the result of these findings and of the research that you did?
What was really interesting is the inspiration for the research was our clients coming to us and saying, we want to understand how to drive customer loyalty. Yeah. And the belief,
don't we all?
Right. And the belief that most came to us with is that there's this idea of delighting, finding these moments of wow, these moments where we can go above and beyond and engage our customers in a very, very meaningful moment, right? Often there's a lot at stake for customers when something's gone wrong, and so if we can somehow dive in and swoop in and establish this great relationship and surprise customers, that's how we earn their hearts, that's how we earn their minds, that's how we earn their wallets, right? And so we started the research under those pretenses of how do we best delight? And that was really the core question we set out to understand. And the reality was, and I can remember this moment very, very specifically in the first cut of data we got back.
An aha moment?
It was an aha moment because it came back and it told us, delight doesn't matter.
Huh. That's shocking for some of us in the service industry to hear.
And for so many companies who have built a mantra and an MO around delighting customers at these moments, the reality is, what we found is customers don't grant a company any more loyalty in those moments where they were surprised or delighted or wowed. The reality is customer service interactions really are responsible much more for disloyalty than they are any positive gain in loyalty.
Interesting.
And I think what it comes down to is understanding when we think about customer loyalty, typically most believe that loyalty is sort of this big pie, and there's all these things that go into this big pie, such as our product performance, right? Our brand, the emotional connection we have with our customers, our service delivery, you name it, all these things go in there. I think the reality is you have to separate that pie into two distinct pies. One is the positive side of loyalty, what impacts positive gain, and what impacts negative or disloyalty. Those are two very different sets of drivers we found out. On the positive side, it is things like our brand. It is things like the impact that we have on customers at an emotional level. It is things such as our performance, our product performance. All those things matter tremendously.
Yeah.
But when you look at that disloyalty side of the pie, it is dominated by customer service interactions because, frankly, customers enter in a disadvantaged state. Something went wrong with the product. I had a question, I had a concern, I had a complaint. And very quickly it goes from being a product flaw to a service issue. And so it's difficult to get customers, when they're already in a disadvantaged state of mind, to come out of that service interaction to become a raving fan of the company.
But they do at times. So how are customers or the companies you're talking to that are doing this right, how are they able to turn it around? What are the things that they should be focusing on?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think it does happen, and there's no shame in delighting customers.
Yeah.
And in generating.
Good, because we like to do that here at Salesforce.
Oh, and absolutely, and we do a lot of work, research, for instance, in the space of sales. And in a sales interaction, you really do want to surprise a customer and help them understand things about their business they never had thought before. And we see tremendous loyalty gains associated with that in a sales setting.
Okay.
When we get into a service setting where something is wrong, at the least the customer has a question, if not a concern, if not a full-blown issue, what we want to do is focus on getting them back up and running as quickly and as easily as possible.
As a customer, I would love that. Solve my issue quickly.
Solve my issue. I just want to get back to my life. This wasn't something I intended on doing when I woke up this morning. I wasn't hoping to spend half my day on the phone with a company, right? Or sifting through websites trying to solve an issue. I just want to get back on with my life. And so what we find is that companies are abiding by a certain set of principles that are focused on this idea of low effort customer interactions. And so the principles span all sorts of different channels and all sorts of different ways they interact with customers. But they're really focused on simplicity, ease, low effort at all those touch points in the interaction.
That's great. And tools like Salesforce can help provide some of that simplicity, help understand who that customer is so that you can have those low effort interactions at all those touch points.
Absolutely.
I would hope.
And I think the biggest, if you step back and you think about the biggest challenge we face today in operations teams, and whether that's contact center or whether that's in different multi-channel environments, we don't understand how customers engage with all those different channels. And I think that's become a real hindrance because in many cases, just take a contact center, for example, and if a call comes in and the customer issue is resolved on that first call, we say, well, that was great. What we don't realize is oftentimes that customer started on a mobile device, they moved to the web self-serve platform, couldn't find an answer there, they maybe tried Google just to see if they could find an answer out there before they even picked up the phone and called the company. And so the amount of effort a customers put into an interaction that we really didn't understand or appreciate can be extraordinarily high. And one of the data points that we found, this is really just telling of how much is at stake here, but each time a customer shifts from one channel to the next channel to the next channel, equates to a 10% decrease in their total loyalty levels to that company. 10% gone.
That's unbelievable. Work, right? Just from switching from, say, a mobile device to the website, or from one device to another device, or picking up the phone and making a call after trying to find it on their own on the website.
Every single time they have to tell their story again, whether that is to a virtual channel or whether that's to a real person. Right? Transfer is the same thing. So these things, we know they happen all the time, and there's a very sort of candid reality that in many cases this is kind of back to basics behavior. This is not, as one of my colleagues likes to say, this isn't rocket surgery. This is basic hygiene, but in many cases we're getting the basics wrong. And in fact, what we find is that in the majority of customer interactions, you step back and sort of look at any dashboard and say, well, that was a great customer interaction. We resolved their issue on the first call. Well, the reality is they had 4 or 5 or 6 interactions with us. They bounce around different channels. We transferred them once. And so the reality is that customer comes out of the interaction more disloyal towards a company rather than saying, okay, well, at least I'm back to normal and I'm at parity with the company.
Now you mentioned mobile and you mentioned self-service. It's something that Salesforce has been investing heavily in over the last couple of years. We've introduced our Community Cloud product. We have introduced our new self-service templates so that companies can spin up self-service sites that are easy to use, that are mobile responsive, very quickly and very easily. And we did it because our customers are asking for that. They want to be able to provide that great mobile self-service experience to their customers. Did you find that in the research as well?
Yeah, we did, and here's, if there's one thing that is broken with self-serve, it is very simply that it is far more easy for us to be fully comprehensive and offer customers every single imaginable approach that they want to solve an issue, and knowledge bases that are massive in nature, and all sorts of options and FAQs. And we often joke that if a customer wants to resolve an issue wearing a virtual reality helmet, skateboarding down a sidewalk, we're going to find a way to resolve the issues in those channels. The reality is customers want very simple, very intuitive interfaces. Now here's kind of an interesting trivia question. How many options do you think a customer has when they enter onto an average B2B companies? Let's start with B2B. How many options do they have to pick from when they enter into a B2B service interaction?
Oh man, I usually just want one, I want the channel that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But I bet, I don't know, 5?
About 50.
50?
There's about 50 different choices that an end user has to make when they engage in a technical support interaction. Now on the B2C side, it's better.
Yeah.
We've gotten a little bit better, a little more streamlined with their service and support sites. It's about 25 choices. But here's the problem, is that any one of those choices gets equally right or equally wrong.
Yeah.
And so this principle of simplicity, ruthless, sort of relentless focus on simplicity, it's way easier to be comprehensive than it is to be simple.
Yeah.
And so I think as we think about developing mobile platforms, as we think about web self-service, that focus on simplicity, streamlined interactions, guided resolution. That's what we call this, guided resolution, where we nudge the customer into the channel and say, hey, this is probably where you should be engaging with us based on your issue type. And there's some really practical ways companies have gotten after this with their self-serve platforms, but help customers understand where should they go. Don't leave the choice to them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Now, another thing that you talk about in the book is this idea of next issue avoidance and trying to anticipate the customer's downstream issue and resolve it before they even call back for that second call. I think that is huge nowadays. We're talking a lot at this conference about analytics and how can you use analytics to try to predict what that next issue might be. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about the findings?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's funny is this finding came to us. One of our client companies that we work very closely with, a telecom company in Canada, I was interviewing them one day and I kept asking, well, how do you think about issue resolution, issue resolution, issue resolution? And they kept correcting me and saying, Nick, we think about event resolution. You have to stop saying issue resolution because in many cases, a customer does end up reaching us in a live channel. They may have tried to self-serve, but for some reason they have to talk to us. And if we just resolve the issue that the customer simply articulated and then hang up on them, in many cases we haven't resolved the full event they're going to have. So to your point, there's often a downstream, a knock-on, sort of a consequential issue that that customer has no idea they're going to have, but we know they're going to have. So 3 days later, the customer's picking up the phone, calling us back and saying, hey, I'm still having this issue, and I don't know if it's related to the first issue or not, but I'm still having problems. My device isn't working, right? My service isn't up and running, whatever the case might be. And so this notion of treating these issues as events, I think has a lot of appeal. And to your point, what's funny is, when we first found this, years and years ago, the notion of analytics helping us wasn't even a remote whisper. The way that often these companies treated it was, jokingly, we called them pizza and beer exercises, because what you did was you brought your best reps together after their shift had ended in the call center and said, hey guys, when customers call us back saying they had just called us a day or two ago, why is that? Right? So we'd feed our teams pizza and beer and have them come up and help us think through, well, what's the issue trees? What are the related downstream issues? So it's remarkable to me that even a few years later, we can start to apply analytics to this and know precisely, hey, if a customer's calling with issue X, there's 40 or 50% chance likelihood they're going to have issue Y. Resolve it now, or send them an email about what they're going to see so they don't call us back. Yeah.
That's something that we are so excited about on the Service Cloud team, and something that anybody who's watching at home or anyone here at Dreamforce is going to be able to see more about on Wednesday at 12:30 at our Service Cloud keynote. We'll be talking about the future of customer service. We'll be talking a little bit about analytics, so make sure you tune in. But we're excited about it, being able to pull that data right into an agent's console so they can access it and know that if a customer's calling with this issue, they're likely to call with another issue, and resolve that and meet the customer's expectations, in fact, exceed it, and maybe even delight them while they're at it.
Hey, it's fine by us if we get all the way to that point.
Yeah,
there's
that would
no harm,
be great.
no foul in this. I think the thing we have to be careful of is still make sure we resolve that original issue, and then make sure you stem that next issue.
Great. So one last piece of advice for our viewers at home.
I think simplicity and ease is the most important thing to be focused on. Relentless focus on simplicity and ease in all your channels, and that's the piece of advice I'll leave you with.
Thanks so much for joining us, Nick. Thanks to everyone at home. Make sure you check out the Effortless Experience by CEB.